The information provided is not a substitute for legal and other professional advice where the facts and circumstances warrant. People should always consult their own legal or other professional advisors and discuss the facts and circumstances that apply to their specific circumstances. The information shared on Ask the Landlord is for educational purposes only.
Hi everyone, and we're back with another episode of Ask the Landlord with our favorite landlord, Albert Dweck. I'm Melissa. I'm one of Albert's producers and a former New York City, Pittsburgh, Lafayette, Louisiana, and Washington, D.C. renter. And together, we're going to be asking this landlord some questions. If you have a question for Albert, leave us a voicemail on the Ask the Landlord hotline. That number is 646-580-3015. All right, Albert. Today we're going to talk about, I want you to define this term for me and then tell us the pros and cons. And the term is staging.
Staging, thank you. Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
Hi. So staging is when you set up an apartment or home with furniture and decorations so that people can see how it would be used and envision how the space would be utilized. And there's also, these days, which is really cool, is virtual staging, which we should talk about also. Really cool. Virtual staging, and there's real staging. So what happens is when you're showing a space as a owner or landlord, or you're looking at a space as a resident or a purchaser, you want to envision how are you going to use the space, right? And very often when people don't know a narrative, they fill it in their own way, right? So like if you leave something unsaid, people are going to say what they know or think, right? So say someone walks into a space and has certain ideas about it, and without measuring, and you're in a competitive situation where you're, either a resident or a landlord or an owner, everybody wants like the space to work the best, right? So then if the space is big and empty or quirky in some way, and you don't know how it's going to work, staging often helps activate the space to show the residents or prospective user how that would work by putting real furniture in places where or decorations, and to show people how you would use it, right? Because some people can't visualize those things, or it makes it easier to visualize now. So I've done staging before where it was a smaller apartment or a condo that I was selling, and you wanted to show people like how it was it was a small studio, right? I was thinking, and we were trying to show people like how much they could fit into that studio, right? It's one thing for, you get to this vacant room and you're like, it's small and I don't know what I'm going to do, like that as a person looking at it. But if you could show people how it could work with the setup and be creative, and then it's much easier to sell, or, people to envision what they could do with this space. So there's real, companies where you could rent furniture to put in for staging, right? So there's like obviously furniture rental companies that do furniture rentals, right? There's also staging companies that you could hire that actually will decorate the space. Obviously, it's not a not-for-profit, so they make money like renting you the furniture and for their services, and it could be quite expensive, but it also sometimes it really helps. activate the space. And then there are, now it's so you can look online and you see like these listings and you go, wait a second, I'm watching this listing online and it's like furnished, it's gorgeous. Like, wait a second, is that like, is someone living there? Or, and then you see like pictures of the apartment vacant and pictures of the home with furniture. And you're like, is that staged? Is that virtual? What's going on? So, and that's another way of showing people what they can do. But again, you know, for me, and everyone's different about these things, but when I get like, it's much easier for me to visualize things when I see them physically in a space. And one example is when we're looking for office space now, and you know, we bring a tape measure or we bring a measuring device and we try to figure out how big things are. Remember when my wife and I moved into our apartment, before we did, we had to measure and kind of figure out where we're going to put stuff. I'm sure you did that too. And some, you know, not all spaces are cookie cutters, right? So you want to figure out, you know, oh, in the bedroom, where does the bed go? You know, how big is the bed? You know, where am I going to put my clothes? You know, everyone's, you know, starts thinking about those things. Oh, I have this big piece of furniture. How do I fit it in? You know, okay, you know, so staging helps with answer those questions for people, how to utilize and activate the space. And I found it very helpful, both hiring companies like that, using furniture. What we've done as owners is, you know, I ended up buying the furniture and then moving it from unit to unit as we sold. And it's very helpful in making the space look and feel real. And from a landlord's perspective, I think, and you know, from an owner or developer's perspective, very often there's realtors, you know, we've done this also where, you know, we'll hire a realtor to sell a number of units in the development, let's say. And that realtor is making, you know, at the end of the day, good money from being the exclusive person on that deal. So they would be inclined to stage the spaces on their own dime out of their money, which has been done also. And then, you know, they'll have an open house or something like that, so people can, you know, see what it's like to be living in that space. So that's what you know, what it's like, and it's specifically good for like quirkier spaces, smaller spaces, different rooms. You know, it's one thing to tell somebody, oh, this space is like a loft and, you know, it looks kind of weird. And you're like, well, you know, you as a person could tell them, oh, this is what you could use it for. But then showing them is a whole different thing, right? So I found that very valuable. So that's what staging is like when you put real furniture in there. Although these days, you know, there's virtual staging, which is really, really cool advance. And I, you know, and especially in the days of artificial intelligence today, is that you can actually, you probably can do this for yourself. Is like see how it would look online for yourself by virtually staging it. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought up virtual staging because I fell victim to it. We looked at a house here and I was like, wow, this basement is great. The furniture is just a perfect fit for this weird L-shaped basement. And I didn't realize though, when I was looking at the pictures, it was AI or virtual. And then I went and I'm like, where's all the furniture?
Right.
But it still gave you that visualization in your head. And furniture definitely makes spaces look larger. So like studios you were talking about, I think absolutely they
Yeah.
do. So my question
Yeah.
is, if you could give it a percentage, what percentage of your units do you stage?
Oh, great question. So let me also say that sometimes the staging looks so good that people want to buy it also. Like people want the furnishings. Like you could sell it.
Right.
Or
Easy
rent it.
peasy.
You could sell it or rent it furnished, And that's another thing. Like imagine, if you wanted something turnkey and you love the furniture and you're like, look, can I just buy it with the furniture,
Hmm.
or can I rent it with the furniture very often? So I think these days more and more people looking for a convenience and, not having to think about it. And there are, that's certainly an aspect to, doing a transaction like this. And so for our rentals, so usually you do staging when you have something that's difficult to rent or that you think you're going to have a challenge either selling or renting. Um, when we're selling condos, for example, that we've developed, we generally stage one. Stage stage one as part of the marketing, or because we're going to do an open house. Like the broker who's handling it will handle that and do staging. So it's typical of our developments that we do that someone's doing a stage, an open house, like so that people could come feel it, touch it, see it, and they'll show units that are vacant and not vacant. So I would say in development, most of the time is the case.
And I think that's great actually to see one model unit perfectly
Model.
staged. Right. This is the.
And then my experience also with very large rental communities, let's like they have 200 units or 300 units, they'll have an on-site rental office and they'll have a model unit because, they'll show that unit as like a cookie cutter and that unit is usually furnished.
Right. That makes sense.
It's fairly typical. But for us, it depends on the size and or if you have a quirky unit and you're like, I don't know how people are going to see that. I said, maybe we'll put some furniture and show that and or rent it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So not for us, it's not a high percentage of rentals. But I would say typical in sales that we do stage one of the units if we have multiple units that we're selling. And you can look online, like when you look at like listings and stuff, you could see where a lot of it today is virtual staging, but I've seen where there's an interesting or quirky apartment or home or rooms that people will stage.
And last question, does virtual staging cost money or is it like free sites?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does cost money.
Yeah.
Like, these days everything
Right.
costs money. I don't know what it costs,
Yeah.
honestly. But
I tried to do that for my house. Like I was trying to take pictures of the kitchen and see if I could change the cabinet colors and, customize it, or the living space, how many seating areas I can hold. But it was actually very difficult for me to find a good site to do that. I didn't want to pay for it, but I'm sure we could have found one. But that's really interesting. And I think I like the concept of staging. I think because a lot of people, no offense, are very not creative, and it gives you the instant gratification of, oh, wow, this is what the space could be,
Yeah. And one of the things you should also pay attention to is, and I pay attention to as a landlord and or if I'm selling something, you want to make sure that even if it's not staged, that the pictures are very good, the lighting is appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
that it's, it's representative of, because that's your chance to show it in the right way. Even if it's not staged, you want to make sure it's clean and it's.
Oh, first impressions are everything. I mean, we all do. We judge books by their covers, especially when it comes to like apartment swiping.
You don't have time swiping.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, if we want to rent an Airbnb or something like that, my wife's like, she doesn't like the bedspread. We're not getting it.
Absolutely, I agree with her 100%. And carpet.
Weird, right? I'm like, how do you know? But she's making a judgment from the carpet and the bedspread.
She's right. I agree. And every bedding should be white in Airbnbs. Don't give me a quilt.
I don't know. That's all on the subject. I'm not qualified, but I understand.
I feel like I've stated enough. But yes, staging is important and it's very interesting. And I do think actually it is going to evolve based on AI and whatnot. So we'll see where I'm excited to see how that goes in 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You got it.
For more episodes, please subscribe to Ask the Landlord on your favorite podcast platform. We'd appreciate it if you left a review on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to watch the show, check out our Ask the Landlord YouTube channel. If you have a question for Albert, feel free to contact him on Instagram at Ask the Landlord and check out his TikTok at Ask the Landlord. Bridging the gap between landlords and tenants, this has been Ask the Landlord. Thanks for listening.